So there's this great sort of motif in The Agony of the Ecstasy where Pope Julius II keeps checking in with Michelangelo, basically saying, is it done yet? Or when's it going to be done? And Michelangelo continues to reply, when I'm finished. When's it going to be done? When I'm finished. And so you sort of get the feeling that maybe that was going on with French authorities, and the restoration of the cathedral was not without its controversies that we learn thanks to a piece in the Wall Street Journal by our next guest, Duncan Stroik, who is a practicing architect, author, and professor of architecture at the University of Notre Dame. I've heard of it. Duncan Stroik, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to be here, Dan and Amy. Thanks for covering this story.
Yeah, so, I mean, before we get to the controversies, just the importance of this cathedral that I think by some estimates dates back almost 900 years, yeah?
Yes, so Notre Dame Cathedral is perhaps one of the most important Gothic cathedrals in the world, and certainly for Americans, it's the one that we know. We often travel to France. We go to Paris, and what do you see but Notre Dame? And, of course, there's a great story that was inspired by the building and its dilapidation in the 1800s by Victor Hugo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And we know that story, and that really helped put it on the map for the French and the English speakers. Well,
and also, too, it's just interesting. I mean, I don't want to be over the top about it, but, you know, rather secularized, one might say godless country that France has become. And yet all of the billionaire potentates in France ponied up. I think they've raised more than $1 billion for this restoration. You know, even for the secular world, this is an important structure. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that's so exciting about this event. I mean, it's this principle that God can bring good out of evil, and this was a great evil to this fire and almost the destruction of the roof and the tower and almost the destruction of the building. And yet we're seeing many good things come from it, and one of it is people's generosity to realize that these are symbols for the French, symbols for the Parisians, and even symbols for the world of beauty, of faith, of humanity, and of history, and that we're part of that history.
Why was there such a quick race to reopen the cathedral?
Well, I think that's President Macron. He wanted to show, the greatness of France, which it is a great country, and of course, his initial idea was something more modern looking and something that would show the century and very, as you said, very secular, something that distinguished the exterior of Notre Dame from the interior. Say we're a secular country with titanium or glass or something on the roof, or the swimming pool, or the, whatever it was on the roof, and crazy stuff. And he loved that idea to show, we're modern people and forget about this faith thing. He wanted to change the building basically and make it into more of a secular national symbol. And that was the beautiful story is that people around the world had problems with that, but most importantly, the French. The French fought it, and he kind of agreed and changed his mind and let them build it the way it was.
Yeah, you want to put an Airbnb up there and a jacuzzi?
They wanted to do like the Notre Dame Cathedral sponsored by L'Oreal, like a big sign on the front of it, something like that.
They would love that, yes.
Yeah.
Thank God that didn't happen.
They would love that, yes.
So now the interesting thing, too, just in terms of people who visit or would like to visit, that some of the artifacts, I mean, it was a devastating fire, but some of the artifacts in the cathedral were actually salvaged and so will be displayed prominently again, like the Crown of Thorns. Yeah,
this is very exciting. The building was heavily damaged, but most of the artwork was preserved. The sculpture, most importantly, the Crown of Thorns was rescued immediately by one of the Monsignors, I believe, and a lot of paintings that were framed paintings, not on the walls, were removed. And so that's very exciting. Of course, the temporary altar that was put in, 30 years ago that looks like it was temporary, and other kinds of furniture were destroyed. But no one really was sad about that.
The controversies over the renovation to the modernizing it. There was also a specific controversy about the spire itself, right?
Yeah, the spire is an amazing thing because it's become, it's part of the building, and we have seen it that way since the 1860s. It's always had this spire. Before that, there was a smaller spire, and this was done by Viollet-le-Duc, a famous French architect restorer. And that was the thing that they wanted to change. They said, well, this is only 170 years old. We can just get rid of that and do, some kind of steel structure or, glass or something that looks odd or modern, sorry. But this is the one, really the symbol. And it's really the greatest damage was because when the roof and the spire caught on fire, and the spire is a couple hundred feet tall, it fell down onto the roof, and it was really the weight, tons of weight of that tower that falling on the roof caused the openings in the roof, five openings in the stone ceiling. And so it was, on the one hand, the symbol of the building was also the greatest destruction. And fortunately, the French and the architects of the cathedral were like, no, this has to be rebuilt. This is a masterpiece. It's kind of like what you said. The Sistine Chapel, if you have a fire in the Sistine Chapel, do you just whitewash and do something modern in there, or do you try to reconstruct it? I think most people would like to see a reconstruction. And so on a great building, you just restore it. And so that's what they did. And it's rebuilt the way it was from the 19th century.
It really is important because, it's just the culture in the West, most recently, where you have this element that wants to essentially erase history and start at year zero, as all revolutions do, the Bolsheviks, the Jacobins. And here we have this appeal to medieval Europe and Christian Europe that still stands in 2024.
Yeah, it's very exciting. As you just pointed out, the enemies of cathedrals throughout history, fire, vandals, iconoclasts, and unfortunately, in our last century, architects are part of that. The people who should be restoring or rebuilding have become part of that iconoclasm. But again, fortunately, for my money, the experts were not followed here. The people spoke up, and the people actually have common sense and appreciate their history and want beauty. And at great cost, they rebuilt the tower and the rest of the building.
Now, this 5-year drama didn't come out, or 5-year reconstruction project didn't come without drama, because one of the people who was tasked with overseeing the reconstruction disappeared. Who is he, and what happened to him?
Oh, is this the general? The general
Yes.
Who was put in charge, and he was a tough guy, and he's probably a very good general, because generals should beat up their soldiers. I'm just kidding, but he was beating everybody up. I don't think he was really on. My understanding is he wasn't really supportive of the idea of the perfect reconstruction using the old methods, the old axes for cutting the wood and the old methods for joining the wood together, mortise and tenon, and some of the stonework. He was more of a Macronian. And, he died this summer, I think, or was it a year ago, and was replaced by another fellow. And, of course, they're all saying how great it was, and nobody's ever mentioning that they wanted to do a modernist addition on top. Everybody's talking as if this was the plan all along and how great it is. And, of course, poor President Macron is not doing well in popularity, so they want to make this, part of his legacy, which is fine, but again, I think he was one of the problems. Not the 5-year idea, but just the idea that you put a parking garage on top of Notre Dame.
Just the scale of this project, I was reading it took 6 months just to remove all the scaffolding.
Yeah, and very delicate. It's up there, hundreds of feet up there. It's next to this building that is a little has just been bruised, damaged, and of course the scaffolding above the tower, where the tower was. They were restoring the tower when it burned down. Very tricky, dangerous stuff, and I haven't heard a lot of people getting hurt. I wouldn't be surprised, but we haven't heard of deaths. It's been very safe, and yet thousands of people working on the project. Not necessarily on the building at one time, but there's hundreds of people that were working on this.
Yeah.
And yeah, just to take down the scaffolding is amazing. I've been up on buildings, on tall scaffolding, but this is amazing to be up, 300 feet in the air on scaffolding. That's serious stuff.
And the importance of heads of state traveling to Paris for this reopening, including the incoming president here.
Yeah, that's very exciting. That's really great, and that's. What's interesting is I'm very proud of it. We, Americans, we're not a very wealthy country. We can't really afford to help out the French. I'm kidding, but the French did rise to the occasion, and almost $1 billion was raised, which is amazing. It sounds like it's more than enough to take care of it, which is really good. But we were I think we were the next biggest donors were the Americans, and we gave maybe not a huge amount, but $56 million isn't bad, and thousands and thousands of Americans gave money to this. So we care. And one of the things I loved was the French architect Philippe Villeneuve and his compatriots came and kind of did a fundraising tour and a Thanksgiving tour during the process. And they traveled all over the U.S. thanking Americans and talking about the project. And I think it resulted in more money. They even came to their namesake, that little college on the other side of the lake, Notre Dame.
Now,
very good.
Do you have any idea why Trump was invited and not Biden, or was Biden invited and turned down the invitation?
I would just assume, because it's happening now, I would assume that the important people are all invited, and I'm sure that President Biden was invited, maybe even other past presidents, let's say, were invited, but he's the sitting president right now. He should go, and I think he says that he's a good Catholic, so you'd think he'd want to go,
right?
But maybe,
he does say that.
It's kind of shocking.
He does say that. Yeah.
I know.
We have heard rumblings.
I would go if they invited me, and I bet those guys might even have a good seat. I'd go.
You could go as his. Yeah, you could be a seat filler. Yeah, his seat filler.
Seat filler, right.
Duncan Stroik, practicing architect, author, professor of architecture at the University of Notre Dame. Duncan, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for Dan and Avi. You're the greatest.
Thanks. So you appreciate your work. He joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.